This is the Revolutionize Retirement Asset Optimizer webinar. And I am Glenn Sedgefield, VP of Marketing for DMI. DMI, if you don't know, is 35 years young with a mission to help advisors and agents optimize business performance with sales, marketing, and operations support. Today, we really do have a very special webinar. I'm going to share something with you that you may not know. Our guest today, Andy Robertson, he's not only the head of business and development for the Corporation for Social Security Claiming Strategies, but he's also the developer and the creator of a software that's formerly known as Athene Retirement Optimizer. So what we're going to unpack today is a software program that's evolved beyond this older system that can deliver on more specific solutions that are in the best interest of your clients. So further, we're also going to discuss a certification program and the methodologies around that program that can help you to integrate that technology with a better understanding of Social Security and annuities to all optimize client retirement. So, Andy is a really special partner with DMI, and we really appreciate his presence today and all the hard work he and his digital team has put into the RAO Retirement Asset Optimizer platform. We also have our very own VP of Annuity Sales, Erick Lindewall. He's an industry veteran with 30 years of experience on the call today. But before I hand it over to Erick and Andy, I just want to ask that everybody use the Q&A function for questions. We're probably going to save the questions for the end, but we will get to those and have Andy and Erick address those. So Erick, I really appreciate you being here, good sir. Could you share your thoughts with us on why RAO and CSSCS are so important today?
Sure, Glenn, I'd be glad to. And first of all, welcome everyone, and thank you for taking some time to join us today. As Glenn mentioned, I've been in the annuity space, in the wholesaling space for 30 years. And one thing I've learned over those 30 years is that one of the biggest challenges many advisors and agents have when talking about annuity solutions is getting to the why. Clients are interested in solutions that solve problems. And one of the biggest challenges we have is helping clients identify and recognize opportunities for improvement in their financial situation. I've been acquainted with Andy, known him for over 30 years, and what he's created is what we believe to be a really revolutionary tool to be able to give an agent and advisor the tools they need to together identify potential opportunities for improvement with the clients, and then lay out a very specific strategy that will show them ways to hit their goals using less of their overall assets. And when I say goals, I mean retirement goals. So, there's a lot of ways to talk about retirement income planning, but the tool that Andy has built and the process and the organization that he's built will make that conversation really seamless for you when you're working with your clients, and create deeper relationships and ultimately help you solve more problems more efficiently for your clients. So we're really blessed and honored to have Andy with us, and that the fact that he's chosen to partner with DMI is really a benefit for us, and ultimately we believe will be of great benefit to you all. So thank you for joining us. Andy, thank you for joining us. It's always a great time when we get together, even when it's virtually. So let me turn it over to you, everyone, Andy Robertson. Andy, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second.
Thanks. I had muted Erick. Sorry. All right, let me try that again. So thanks, Erick. Thanks for the great introduction, and Glenn and Maureen. I'm excited to be here and share with everyone what it is that we've created here with the Retirement Asset Optimizer. My goal in the time we have this morning is to really get you to think about retirement income planning just a little differently than maybe we've thought about it historically, and look at how we can leverage more effectively what I describe as all the tools in the retirement income planning toolbox. And the idea is, if the number one goal is to make sure that people never wake up penniless in retirement, then we need to put ourselves in a position where we can determine up front, if possible, which strategies are most likely to minimize the chances that that could happen in the first place. So ultimately, when we look at the retirement income planning space and where we sit today, things have really changed dramatically for the typical retiree. They went from, not long ago, really focusing on two elements, Social Security and a traditional pension plan, to now really focused on a multitude of elements, how to kind of twine all those pieces to get the ideal outcome. And it's changed things dramatically. The good news is, from my perspective, Erick mentioned 30 years. Yeah, been in this business for going on 35 years. And the success we all enjoy is really a byproduct of this transformation from having the burden removed off the employer and onto the employee. I mean, the business as we know it, certainly as I know it over, again, almost 35 years, has changed just dramatically. And it's created a tremendous opportunity for all of us who are really focused on building retirement income plans in a way that, frankly, without that transition would have never happened. But as part of that, I think we really have a duty to our clients and our prospects to make sure that we're opening their eyes to all, as I said earlier, all of the tools in the retirement income planning toolbox, not just some of the tools, because ultimately, the more adept we are at leveraging all the tools, the more successful we are delivering plans within what I'll describe as the budget that a client has been able to establish, right? So that budget is really the amount of capital they've been able to accumulate. We've heard, for a long time now that Americans are, by and large, not great savers. This 401k experiment, so to speak, has kind of proven that to be true, at least according to academia. And ultimately, the vast majority of people are considered underfunded. And, what I find is that may seem true on the surface, but when you look at things a little differently, maybe the issue isn't that they haven't saved enough money at all. Maybe the issue is we're just not bringing to them the right process and the right tools. So I focus on a concept called retirement asset optimization, and there's really two assets that I'm going to focus on when it comes to this presentation. One is Social Security. I believe Social Security is the single largest retirement asset that most people own. I'll get pushback from people who say, well, you don't own Social Security. Well, you may not own the assets, if you will, but you own the rights to the income. So I would argue that you do own it, and you own it for the duration not only of your life, but for the life of your surviving spouse. So you do own that. And then you have the assets that you've been able to accumulate. And the question is, how can you most effectively optimize all those assets to build a better, more fortified plan for less capital? And what I'll focus on today, first and foremost, is Social Security, and then secondarily, annuities, and how these two, what I call leverage solutions, come together to deliver significantly and profoundly better result without putting any additional burden on the client to save more money, take on more risk, delay retirement, all of the things that ultimately they don't want to do, but many are faced with having to do if we don't come up with a better approach. So again, I just touched on it. The vast majority of academia says that Americans are crummy savers. This is no surprise, right? We've all heard this now for the better part of 20 years. And again, my goal is to look at this with a little more of an analytic eye and say, is it really the fact that Americans are crummy savers, or could it be something else? Is there something we can do as an industry to bring more value to those folks? Now, the first thing I want to touch on is Social Security itself, and when does the decision normally happen? So, of course, we all know, if you've been in this business any length of time, you all know, if you talk to people about Social Security, their intent before they get educated is to take benefits early. When we go into the software, one of the first questions we ask is, at what age do you intend to take benefits? And the answer is almost always early. And these statistics essentially prove that out, right? No surprise. Most people, again, before they get educated, that's what they're predisposed to do. What I find interesting is when we push back and ask people, why is it you're so committed to taking Social Security benefits early? We get a handful of answers, but they're all around the same thing. This idea that, I know if I wait, I get more, but I'm not convinced I'll be here. So I'm afraid to wait and not take benefits early, wait till 70, get more for the opportunity to get more and then not make it, right? So the first thing they're concerned about is not making it. The other thing they're concerned about is whether or not Social Security will be here. Well, the thing I focus on is this idea that you may not be here. So I'll push back on people and force them to kind of defend that position, you know? So you're convinced you're not going to be here. Why is it you wouldn't be here, right? And ultimately what I get really from the people I'm talking to is they just don't want to make the wrong bet. When it comes to Social Security, they really think of Social Security as a bet. They don't think of it as a retirement income planning tool. They look at it separately, essentially in a vacuum from everything else, and they don't want to make the wrong bet. And the wrong bet in their mind would be opting not to take Social Security benefits early, waiting all the way till 70 so that I can get considerably more than I would get at 62. And on their 364th day of their 69th year, slipping, falling off a cliff, call it 1,000-foot cliff, and their dying thought is, oh crap, I should have taken Social Security benefits at 62, right? That's what they live in fear of, is somehow they leave $1 on the table that they never wanted to leave on the table. So instead, they take Social Security benefits early. So they never have to face, or at least that's what they're planning on doing, they never have to face that situation. Now, what I find is not only are they intending to take Social Security benefits early before they get educated, but their intent is to save all of those Social Security checks. And of course, if your intent is to take benefits early and save all those checks, you know, there's a couple of challenges we need to discuss as it relates to whether or not you'll have the intestinal fortitude to do that and do it successfully, and whether or not there's any barriers that you're going to face that you don't know about. But ultimately, what they're thinking is effectively a hedging strategy, right? I'm going to take benefits early. I'm going to keep working. I'm going to save every check. And then if I'm still here at 70, I'll just use the money I've saved in this secondary retirement account by taking Social Security benefits early to match the increase I would have gotten had I simply waited. And by the way, if I slip and fall off that cliff, I have this incredible kind of feeling that I didn't leave anything on the table, right? I didn't make that mistake. So that's kind of, in my estimation, what we're up against psychologically when we talk to people about what they're thinking about doing with Social Security, again, before they get educated. So what I've advocated for in the financial advisory community is to take an educational approach with consumers and help them understand what they don't know, because they simply don't know what they don't know. And until they get educated, they never will know. So I advocate that financial advisors provide that kind of education and then ultimately give people the opportunity to come talk to them about these things that they didn't know. So the first thing I would point out to all of you and to any consumer is, I know you understand if you take benefits, you get less, and if you delay, you get more, but do you really understand what those numbers look like, right? So just to be clear, if I have a full retirement age of 66 and 8 months, which people who are attaining full retirement age today, it's 66 and 8 months. And if you take benefits early, you get a fractional reduction for every month you take early. Do you know what that equates to at the various ages in which you take early, right? So if I have a full retirement age of 66 and 8 months, and my intent is to take benefits as early as possible, 62, what is the actual cumulative decrease I'll experience as a result of those fractional reductions? 28.3%. And that's for life, right? So you're gonna get 28.3% less at 62 than you would have gotten had you waited till 66 and 8 months. Now the question is, how much more am I going to get if I wait beyond 66 and 8 months, or FRA? So for every month you wait beyond FRA, you get a fractional increase. And that fractional increase equates to 8% per year. So most people are familiar that there's with an increase. They don't know exactly how much it is, but it is 8% per year. By the way, it's simple, not compound. And that's because Social Security does not apply the delayed retirement credits until you file for benefits. So there simply is no opportunity for compounding. You can see here from 66 and 8 months to 67, the increase is only 2.67%. But of course, that's only because it's a fractional year. From 67 to 68, you'll see the increase is 8. Then to 69, it's another 8. And to 70, it's another 8. But it's an 8% simple increase. But really what I'm getting at is most people can talk a little bit about how much less they'll get. They're not real clear on how much more they get. They just know it'll be more. But in the end, they're not real clear at all on the difference between what you can get as early as possible and at 70. And it's important to understand that if your intent is to take benefits early, build a secondary retirement account, and match the very increase, you're not even clear on what the increase represents. So what is the increase on the current Social Security formulas? 76%. So if you opt not to take benefits at 62 and wait all the way till 70, you are guaranteed to get 76% more at 70 than you would have gotten at 62. And to be clear, it cannot be less, but it could be more. That's a minimum increase. So you have to build a big enough secondary retirement account by having the intestinal fortitude to save every one of those checks to match a minimum 76% increase. And while, like a lot of things in financial planning, that sounds good in theory, we're going to kind of dig into whether or not that's practical. Because I think what you're going to find is not so much, right? So the first thing is this, from an educational perspective, the first thing consumers really don't understand as it relates to this hedging strategy is they're going to be faced with the earnings test, right? So if I am under full retirement age, I opt to collect my Social Security benefits, and I have earned income from gainful employment, I'm going to be subjected to the earnings test. And what the earnings test says for 2024 is if I have more than $22,320 in earned income, for every $2 I'm over that threshold, I have to forfeit $1 in Social Security benefits. So let's be clear about what that might mean and how that might impact my strategy of taking benefits early and saving every check. Oh, wrong way. Here we go. So let's say you have gross earnings of $70,320 as an individual. That would put you over the earnings test threshold, $22,320, by $48,000. And we know for every $2 you're over, you have to forfeit $1 in benefits. Between the ages of 62 and 66, when you would be at this 2-for-1 forfeiture ratio, you would forfeit, in my example, $24,000 a year of potential Social Security benefits for 4 years. That's $96,000 in potential income you could have received that you're not going to receive. So my point is, going to be very difficult to build that secondary retirement account if you're actually not getting your hands on those checks. And to be clear, Social Security refers to the forfeiture of checks as a withholding. So if you're over that threshold, they're going to withhold checks until the forfeiture requirement is met. But to be clear, the term withhold, in my estimation, implies it could be returned. It's never returned, right? You're actually forfeiting those dollars. You do get what's known as an adjustment to the reduction factor later, but it's no way near and a far cry from getting those dollars back. So there's just no comparison between forfeiting those dollars and the adjustment to the reduction factor. So why is all this important? Again, if your intent is to take benefits early and keep working so that you can save every check, it's going to be very difficult to execute this hedging strategy if you don't get, in my example, 4 out of the 8 years worth of benefits you were thinking you're going to accumulate so that you could match that 76% increase. The other thing to keep in mind is the earnings level that's looked upon is your gross earnings. So if you've got older clients who, maybe had kids they had to put through college and they were, they weren't really stacking money the way they needed to at certain points of their life. So they were taking advantage of the catch-up provision later in life. The fact that you might have a client who's making $50,000 a year and saving, 50% of that in a 401k plan, that has no bearing on the earnings test, right? They look at your gross earnings. They don't care about how much you're socking away. So there's really very little chance that you can avoid this earnings test issue, especially as a W-2 employee. That's an important thing to understand. So again, very difficult to execute this hedging strategy if you don't get your hands on the checks. But more importantly, let's say the earnings test didn't exist. Let's say you could take benefits at 62, you save those checks every month like clockwork over the next 96 months. The real question is, how much capital would you have to accumulate? And what would you have to earn above and beyond what Social Security provided in payments to accumulate that level of capital? The level of capital needed to match this 76% increase. So let's put some numbers to this just so we can kind of quantify it. So let's say we have 2 spouses and their primary insurance amounts are $3,200 and $2,800 if they wait till FRA. But like many, their intention is to take benefits early. So instead of the household collecting $6,000 a month, they're going to collect $4,300 a month, right? Well, $4,300 a month over the next 96 months. How much am I going to have to accumulate to match the increase? Well, to be clear, we need to understand what exactly that increase is in real dollars. The increase, 76% increase from $4,300 is $7,599 a month. So to be clear, if you take benefits at 62, the assumption is at 70, you'll be getting the same $4,300. And you'll need an additional $3,299 above the 4,300 to get to the 75.99 you would have gotten had you simply waited. So what we're really kind of stress testing here is how much capital I need to accumulate between 62 and 70 to have a reasonable probability of delivering this additional $3,299 a month that I need to match what I would have gotten had I waited. And the answer is a big number, and here's how we arrive at that number. $3,299 a month, or just shy of $40,000 a year, is really what we're tasked with delivering off this secondary retirement account that we've accumulated by having the intestinal fortitude to save every check. Well, the back end of the amount of capital we'll have to accumulate, I wanted to use what I call a credible process to arrive at that number. So I focus on initial safe withdrawal rate research, which is an abundance of, and I'm guessing everybody on this call is intimately familiar with. The 4% safe max number that we got in the early 90s is kind of the standard that everybody refers to. So I'm going to use that number, that 4% number, but I'm going to make two adjustments to that number, and I'm going to do it for good reason. Number one, I want to point out that 4% number that Bengen gave us assumed we wanted to achieve an 80% probability of success over 30 years. No one chooses 80% in our software. So when we're building a case for someone, we ask them, what do you want the probability of success to be? 99, 95, 90, 80, 50. No one picks 80. Everybody picks 90 or 95 or 99. So we want to make an adjustment to account for the fact that consumers want a higher probability of success than the researchers came up with when they delivered the 4%. So we're going to adjust that downward to account for the higher probability of success that we seek. The other thing about the 4% that I'm sure you're aware of is that's a gross number, right? So that number was the maximum amount of stress a portfolio could withstand. And that includes not only the distribution going to the client, but the cost involved in providing that money management. So we're going to assume 100 basis points is the all-in cost for the full service relationship that ultimately you'd be providing. I think that's a defendable number, probably a low number, but a defendable number. And we want to look at what impact does that have on the actual initial safe withdrawal rate. So 4% goes down to 3.65% when we increase the probability of success from 80 to 95. And then we take 100 basis points off the top of that number to get to the net in your pocket initial safe withdrawal rate. Why do we have to get to a net in your pocket? Well, we need to get to the percentage we're going to have in hand that we can use to put $39,588 of additional income in the client's pocket. And once we get to that net in your pocket initial safe withdrawal rate number, we can back into the amount of capital that's required for us to match this 76% increase. So to arrive at this number, it's really simple math. We just take the $39,588 we need from this capital and say $39,588 is 2.65% of what number, and it's just shy of 1.5 million. So to be clear, you save that $4,400 a month like clockwork over the next 96 months. We pretend the earnings test doesn't exist, that you actually have the intestinal fortitude to do so, and you need to accumulate just shy of 1.5 million to have a 95% chance of delivering the additional capital needed to match the increase you would have gotten had you simply waited. So the real question is, obviously, $4,400 a month over 96 months comes no way near $1.5 million. What do you have to earn a compounding annual growth rate to go along with that monthly savings to get to this number? It's just shy of 30%. So if you deliver a compounding annual growth rate for your client during that period of time between 62 and 70 of just shy of 30% to go along with the incredible savings job you were able to execute at $4,400 a month, what you would have succeeded in doing is matching the 76% increase you would have gotten had you simply waited. Now think about the level of risk you'd have to take on, and you have to position the client in to have any chance at accruing a compounding annual growth rate of 30%. The likelihood is you couldn't even get that kind of posture from an investment perspective through a suitability review. But nevertheless, that's what you'll be needing in a compounding annual growth rate to go through with the savings to compile this much capital over that 8-year period. And again, keep in mind, 30% assumes you receive every check and you're not subjected to the earnings test. Now, beyond that, here's the part that a lot of people miss. Even if they get what I just went through, the part they miss is that 76% increase is a minimum increase. As I said earlier, it cannot be less, but it could be more. Well, how could it be more? Real simple. Once you reach what Social Security calls that first year of entitlement, age 62, whether you're collecting Social Security benefits or not, every time a cost of living adjustment is declared, your Social Security benefit, your primary insurance amount, is increased on a compounded basis to account for that cost of living adjustment. Again, whether you're collecting benefits or not. So you don't have to be collecting once you attain age 62 to participate in the value that the COLAs represent. Why is that important? That's important because the only way somebody would have just a 76% increase at 70 is if between 62 and 70, not a single cost of living adjustment was declared. Now, going back to 1975, when COLAs became automatic, there's only been 3 times when no COLA was declared, and only 1 time was it in consecutive years. So the likelihood that you would have consecutive years over an 8-year window where not a single cost of living adjustment was declared is, I would argue, highly unlikely. And the reality is you'd have a significant increase above and beyond the 76% increase as a result of those COLAs. So let's take a look. I always update these numbers every year, and I look back at them in hindsight and say, if I met you on January 1st, 2016, you had just attained age 62, and you asked me how much more am I going to get if I wait till 70, I would say at least 76%, cannot be less, but it could be more. How much more? Well, we won't know until you're 70. So now we reconvene January 1st, 2024. You've now attained age 70. What was the actual increase when you add these compounded cost of living adjustments to the PIA, and then add those delayed retirement credits on top of that? Keep in mind there's a zero in here. The actual increase that you would have experienced would not be 76%, it would have been 127%. And to be clear, I'm not cherry picking. I'm going back in time and looking at every year the cost of living adjustment was declared and applied to that number, and this is where we end up. So this zero is going to drop off because we're going to add the new COLA for 2025, which was just declared. This number is going to go up. So my point is this: you don't know what you don't know from a consumer perspective. This idea that you want to build a hedging strategy sounds good in theory. The first thing you're going to be up against is the earnings test. But even if the earnings test didn't exist, the type of performance you'd have to achieve to match a 127% increase is just not, it's not in the cards. It wasn't in the cards to match a 76% increase at nearly 30%. Obviously, there's no chance you're going to match a 127% increase. And the point we're making is there are opportunities here from an economic value perspective that are not accounted for when people do what I call the traditional Social Security analysis, which is basically the back of the napkin, break even kind of approach that they focus on, and they don't look at anything else. And our goal through education is to get them to see far beyond break even and to see that there's far more economic value that Social Security brings to the planning process when you look at it a little bit differently. So how does this all come together? I start out by saying our goal is to help people figure out which combination of Social Security filing strategies is going to minimize the likelihood that they ever wake up penniless. So let's see how this all comes together. Let's say we have 2 spouses, both 66 and 8 months. Well, let's say they're 66 and they're contemplating taking benefits at 66 and 8 months. 62 is off the table after the education they've gone through. They have an annual income goal of $108,000. They want the income to last for 30 years. They have a desired probability of success for that plan of 95%, and together they've accumulated $1.2 million in assets. We want to figure out right up front before they make any decisions, is $1.2 million enough to achieve their objectives? Their objectives are 30 years with a 95% probability of success. And the answer to that question, the first thing we have to establish is, what is Social Security going to provide? And then what are we going to be responsible for as the financial advisor? What are we going to be responsible for providing with the 1.2 million assets to make the plan successful? So we'll look at this in 2 ways. We'll look at taking benefits early. We'll call that scenario the earlies, and early in this case is 66 and 8 months. And then we'll look at the laters. What if they waited till 70 they accrued the delayed retirement credits. What impact would that have on whether or not the $1.2 million is enough? So step one is to figure out what is it that we're responsible for providing with the 1.2 million. To answer that question, we first have to establish what is Social Security going to provide. So for the early, Social Security is going to provide 72 out of the 108,000, right? That's 3,200 for spouse one, 2,800 for spouse two. So that's 6,000 a month, 72,000 a year. And then conversely, if they wait for getting COLAs for a minute, how much additional income will they have thanks to the delayed retirement credits alone? Well, they're going to be up to 91,188. So we're going to look at how that might impact the capital requirements. So the gap, which is what ultimately we're responsible for delivering out of the capital for the earlies, is $36,000. And for the laters, before we make any adjustment for inflation, the gap is 16,805. So how do we determine whether or not that's enough capital? Now, the way we do it on the back end is we do some quick math like we did earlier using initial safe withdrawal rates for determining how much capital is required. I call it a stress test. So in this case, we say, all right, the earlies need 36,000 to go along with Social Security to get to the 108,000 of income they desire. The initial net safe withdrawal rate, though, is 2.4. Why is it 2.4 in this case and it was 2.65 earlier? Because earlier I was talking about income beyond 70, right? So 70, we expect a shorter mortality. If we take earlier, there's a longer mortality. So the initial safe withdrawal rate is for the full 30 years, and that net in your pocket safe withdrawal is 2.4%. So to determine if 1.2 million is enough, we simply say $36,000 is 2.4% of what number? $1.5 million. And this is how we arrive at whether or not this plan is going to be fully funded. Now, they don't have 1.5 million, they have 1.2 million. And no surprise, like 77% of Americans, even though they've done a great job saving, they still don't have enough capital to meet their objectives of 108,000 over 30 years with a 95% probability of success. So what have the options historically been? Well, the client can delay retirement, they can save more money, they can reduce their income expectations in retirement, they could take on a potentially more aggressive investment posture. But at the end of the day, the burden really falls on the client to make a different decision. To solve this problem, they need to do something different. They have to delay, they have to save more money, they have to take on more risk, they have to reduce their expectations. Well, what if I told you that taking Social Security at a different time may be the very answer they need and that they don't have to do any of the things we just talked about? Well, if they wait till 70, under that scenario, again, for the laters, the inflation adjusted gap, originally 16,000 some, by the time they get to 70, because to be clear, we're assuming they're retiring at 66 and 8 months. Whether they take benefits at FRA, they take benefits at 70. That part doesn't change. But if they retire at 66 and 8 months and don't take benefits till 70, then we've got to bump that gap up to account for any inflation that may be experienced between 66 and 8 months and 70. So when we apply a historical inflation factor of 3.1%, that's 16 and some odd $1,000 that originally we noticed was the gap. The actual inflation adjusted gap at 70 is 18,603. Now, how much capital do we need to deliver that beginning at 70? Well, we simply divide that by the initial safe withdrawal of 2.65. Again, why is it a little bit higher? Because we're 3 years, 4 months into the 30-year time horizon, so that has a positive impact on the initial safe withdrawal rate. Now we don't need $1.5 million, we need 700,000. So obviously it looks like, at least initially, we're moving in a different direction. We're moving in a direction that's closer to a situation where the client might be fully funded. However, if the intent is to retire at 66 and 8 months and not take benefits until 70, then we have an additional dimension here that we've got to consider, right? So if they opt to delay and take benefits later, then they're going to have to self-fund their income need from FRA to 70. We call that the bridge period. And the amount of capital they need to use to fund that bridge period, we call the bridge capital. So in this case, we're assuming no income beginning at 66 and 8 months. We're going to fully fund the 108,000, inflation adjusted at 3.1% until they're 70. The total amount of capital would need to fund that bridge is 373,206. And then we need 702 at 70 to deliver, as we talked about a minute ago, the additional 18,603 that when added to the Social Security gets them to the income goal they desire. Now, these two numbers combined, we deliver the same income plan, the desired plan, not for $1.5 million, but $1.075 million. So to be clear, we just took the same income goal, the same time horizon, the same portfolio construct, the same inflation assumption, the same desired probability of success, the same primary insurance amounts. The only difference between the earlies and the laters is when and how they took benefits, and the impact from a capital perspective is profound, right? So again, we're determining upfront which path is the one that's going to present the biggest challenge and which one do we want to select versus avoid. Clearly, taking benefits later for the client is much more attractive because they go from underfunded by $300,000 to slightly overfunded. That's a call it a $425,000 swing in their favor. And by the way, it didn't require them to get lucky, right? They didn't have to get lucky by picking the right stock or the right bond or like crypto. Today we're talking about crypto after the election, right? Stocks, bond, crypto. We didn't have to have the perfect sequence, right? Simply by taking benefits at a different time, we provided a profoundly different outcome, and the client never finds themselves in the position, or should never find themselves in the position that they would have been in had they moved forward with the initial plan. So obviously, taking benefits later in this instance pays massive dividends. Now, is there anything else that taking benefits later could provide as an incentive to this client from a planning perspective? Well, how about this? By the time they reach 70, whether they take benefits early or later, the inflation-adjusted income goal goes from 108 to 119,557. We project the Social Security for the earlies. By the time they're 70, it'll be 79,742. And the laters, it'll be 26.6% more thanks to delayed retirement credits. So the laters will have 26.6% more guaranteed income. But here's the part nobody understands. They'll also have 40% less taxable income. So not only are we delivering a plan that goes from underfunded by 25% to fully funded or even overfunded, but we're going to deliver a plan that's far more tax efficient. How can that be? Well, the first thing is for the earlies, that initial income gap, which was $36,000, thanks to inflation, by the time they're 70 is $39,815. So we're going to look at, from a tax perspective, all of their Social Security income and all of the IRA distribution, which we're assuming is coming from this fully tax-infested $1.2 million. And we're going to do a full tax assessment on it. And we're going to discover that out of the $79,742 in Social Security income, $36,000 of it is considered taxable. Add that to the fully taxable IRA distribution to close the gap, and the total taxable income for the earlies on 119 is $76,000. But for the laters, it's only 45, almost 46,000, 40% less. How can that be? Well, first and foremost, there's more Social Security income, so we need less fully taxable IRA income. We have almost 101,000 in Social Security income, and only 27,000 of it's taxable. When you add that to the 18,000 in IRA distributions to close the gap, we're only at 45,921. Well, how can that be? What most people understand is that once your Social Security income is over a certain threshold, anywhere from 50 to 85% of your benefit could be taxed. The reality is there's a lot of confusion around that, and that's not quite how it works. So through education, we help people understand exactly how you determine the amount of taxable income you'll have on your Social Security benefits. So take a look. In this column right here, on the right, we talk about the various thresholds, 50% and 85%. So there's two things I would point out. One, this is not a flat tax, even though it's often thought of as a flat tax. It's a progressive tax, up to 50 or up to 85. And the thresholds that, frankly, most people are familiar with, more than 32,000 for a married couple filing jointly, and up to 50% of your benefits taxed. More than 44,000 for a married couple, then up to 85% of their benefit is taxed. Most people are familiar with these thresholds. Where the confusion lies is what income are these thresholds applied to? Is it my total income? Is it my Social Security income? No, it's neither. it's your provisional income. And this is where the magic happens. Provisional income is arrived at by taking 100% of what Social Security calls your modified adjusted gross income and 50% of your Social Security benefit. So modified adjusted gross income, simply put, is all your earned, unearned, and tax-free dividend income. So take all earned, unearned, and any tax-free dividends you might be collecting from a muni portfolio, you count that at 100%. All your Social Security under provisional income is counted at 50. Those two numbers together equal your provisional income, and it's that number, that provisional income number, that these thresholds are applied to. So you're probably starting to piece together that obviously a plan more heavily weighted in Social Security, being that it's only counted at 50%, is automatically going to be more tax efficient than a plan more heavily weighted in fully taxable IRA distributions, right? But let's take a look. I'm going to skip this and let's just look at the earlies. So the earlies, by the time they're 70, their Social Security income is projected to be this much. If we take the Social Security income and then all of the IRA distribution to close the gap, and we apply the provisional income formula, we take 50% of the Social Security, all of the fully tax invested IRA, and we arrive at a provisional income number of $79,686. We need that number to figure out how much of this Social Security income is taxed. Then all the IRS does is they take this provisional income value and they subtract that first threshold. They say everything from the first threshold up to the provisional income value in step one, we're going to account for 50% of that value. So 32 from 79,686 leaves 47,686. We're going to earmark 50% of that as taxable. Okay, that's Social Security income that's considered taxable. Now, step two, take that same provisional income number. Now you apply that second threshold. Everything over the second threshold from 44 to that provisional income number, 79,686, which is 35,686, we're going to count at 35. Now, let me be clear. We talked about 50 and 85. Why is it only 35? Because remember, in step one, we said everything from 32 to 79, we're going to already account for at 50. So that includes everything from 44 to 79, right? Because 44 is greater than 79. So everything from 32 is already counted up to 79 and 50. We only need to pick up another 35 to get to the 85 on the over 44 threshold, because in step one, we already counted it at 50. So add these two numbers together, and now you have the total Social Security, taxable Social Security. So that's how we go from 79, almost $80,000 in Social Security income to only 36,000 if it's taxable. It's stunning to people when they see these numbers. They can't believe it. How about the laters? Again, they have considerably more guaranteed income, but because they have more Social Security income, which is only counted at half, and significantly less fully countable, fully tax-infested IRA income, the provisional income number is lower, right? Half the Social Security, all of the gap income, which is not even half of what it was for the earlies, gives you a lower provisional income number. You can just see the math for yourselves. Real simple. They have a total taxable Social Security of 27,318. So even though we have just shy of 101,000, only 27,000 of it's taxable. Most people, through their confusion about how Social Security benefits are taxed, would assume 85% of that 101,000 would be considered taxable, when in reality, it's only 27 or 27%. This blows people's minds. And it's because they simply don't understand that the thresholds are not applied to your total income, your Social Security income, but these provisional income numbers. So to go back to where we started, not only are the earlies, the laters, not only do they have a fully funded plan, but it's also highly tax efficient, because guess what? On $45,921 of taxable income, when this couple goes to file their tax return next year for 2024, they're going to be entitled to at least a standard deduction, right? Everybody's entitled to at least that, and they should consult a tax professional to determine if they should itemize. But at the end of the day, the standard deduction for a married couple filing jointly, both over age 65, is $32,300. So we're going to wipe out the vast majority of what's considered taxable. You're going to have just over $13,000 of total taxable income, which we apply a 10% marginal tax rate to. and the laters owe roughly $110 a month in federal income tax on almost $10,000 a month in total income. So to be clear, not only do we deliver the plan, not only is it fully funded, right? It's also highly tax efficient, and it didn't require us to take any additional risk. We didn't have to do Roth conversions. We didn't have to do any kind of financial planning gymnastics to get them to a place where not only are they fully funded, but they're highly tax efficient. All we had to do is understand how to leverage more successfully the tool known as Social Security. I believe it's the most dynamic tool in the toolbox. I believe it's arguably the single most valuable retirement income asset you own because you own the rights to the income. But the real question is, could you make it better? And the answer is yes, you could make it better, because everything up till now has assumed that you're going to take Social Security and any remaining income that your plan may require, you're going to arrive at by doing a systematic withdrawal from an asset allocation approach, right? And we use initial safe withdrawal rates to establish how much capital we need to deliver that additional income. And simply by taking benefits at a different time, we went from underfunded by $300,000 to overfunded by almost $125,000. That's a $425,000 swing in the client's favor. But is asset allocation the only way we can deliver income? And the answer is no. And I focus on the concept of what I call asset optimization. So the first asset we look at optimizing is Social Security. The second are the assets that you've accumulated. Well, how could we optimize those? Well, instead of using an asset allocation approach, what if we went to Erick and said, Erick, my client needs $18,603 a year, right, on a fully guaranteed basis for the duration of 2 lives, and I want to purchase the solution that's going to deliver that today. Erick would come back and say the premium is $305,468. So think about it. Under the asset allocation approach, if I delay and take benefits at 70, I need $702,000 to deliver the balance of the income at a 95% probability of success, right, beginning at 70. And I need $373 to carry me during the bridge period from FRA to 70. Well, what if instead of using an asset allocation approach, we use the annuity? We still have the bridge capital because we're still retiring at FRA, just not taking benefits till 70. What's the capital requirement now? 678, 674. So again, let's be clear on what just happened, right? We took the same income goal, the same time horizon, the same portfolio cost, not portfolio cost, same inflation assumption. Everything is exactly the same. But now, instead of using an asset allocation approach, we've introduced an annuity. And what has the impact been for the client to go along with the Social Security optimization approach? Well, it's been profound. Again, the original plan, which is what most people are planning on going forward with, taking benefits early and rolling the dice, put them at underfunded by $300,000. Now they're overfunded by $521,000, right? They have $1.2 million. We only need $678. That gives them a surplus of $521. Add that to the $300 in underfunding they were facing early. That's an $821,000 swing in the client's favor. And again, it didn't require us to get lucky, be better at picking stocks or bonds. We simply needed to be better at demonstrating the value that all the tools in the toolbox can provide. That's a 55% reduction in capital requirement, and we can determine this up front. You don't have to make a decision and then find out 15 years from now that it was a mistake and there's no way to get out of the situation you've created. We can use the retirement asset optimizer to explore this right up front and estimate capital requirements for asset allocation versus asset optimization. And to be real clear, we never really know definitively how much capital we're going to need to fully fund an asset allocation approach until the death of the second spouse. But under the asset optimization approach, we know exactly, unequivocally, how much we have to commit to the income plan today. So now, because we know exactly how much we have to commit, we know exactly how much we have left to do better, more productive things with from a planning perspective. In this case, $521,000. This is a game changer for your client. It's a game changer for you. We just took the plan, the earliest plan, from having 67% of the income guaranteed to 100% of the income guaranteed. From 67% of the income being adjusted for inflation because of the product I chose with a performance-based solution, 100% of the income being adjusted without market exposure. we took them from having 61% of the income considered taxable to 38% before standard deductions. And the minimum annual guaranteed survivor income went from 38.4 to 67,240. How much more capital would you have to have the death of the first spouse to match the minimum increase, the 67,240 over the 38.4? Again, that assumes no cost of living adjustments on the annuity income or Social Security. So ultimately, if I've done my job today, what I've convinced you of is whether or not people have saved enough money has far less to do with whether or not their retirement income plan is successful. What really drives the outcome for the people we want to work with is the approach we take. And more importantly, I would argue the people they choose to work with, right? So it's the people they choose to work with that determine whether or not they have a successful plan or a plan that is on the edge. What we've developed here is a much more successful plan. Let's look at it tactically. Let's look at it the way a client might look at it. Under the earlies plan, you have to commit all $1.2 million to the income bucket. That's 100% of what you've accumulated, and it's still only 75% of what good, credible science says we need. There's nothing left for any discretionary needs. There's nothing left for legacy. How about under the optimized plan? Between the bridge capital and the annuity, we're going to commit 57% of the capital, 678, 674. Now we have 521,000 we can allocate any way we want. We could put, for instance, 25% of it in the discretionary bucket and say to the client, listen, you have $300,000 you could burn through before you ever threaten the fully funded, fully inflation adjusted, and highly tax efficient nature of the very retirement income plan we just built, right? We have 221,000 we could put to work for the purposes of legacy planning. You could put all of it in legacy planning, some of it in legacy planning, all of it in a discretionary bucket. You have options because you have a fully funded plan that you know today is fully funded. You don't have to wait till somebody passes away to figure out whether or not it's going to work and then build a legacy plan. You can figure it out up front. Now, the only objection, of course, is people will come back and say, well, don't annuities have surrender charges? And the answer is absolutely. And in return for dealing with those surrender charges, we only have to commit 57% of the capital to the income plan, and it's fully funded. So let me see if I understand the question. Are you concerned about access? Are you concerned about liquidity? Are you concerned about control? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. Well, that's your concern. That's exactly why you should be focused on the asset optimization strategy, because not only do we deliver a plan that's fully funded, fully inflation adjusted, highly tax efficient, right? Unlike the earlies plan, but we have $521,000 you can burn through anytime, any way you like. That's the epitome of access, control, and liquidity. Here, you're going to invade the one bucket that's already woefully underfunded and destabilize an already unstable situation. If you need more than your monthly check, I would argue that this is far more liquid and far more appropriate for anybody than the traditional planning approach. So again, I would say that the issue is not whether or not they've saved enough money, at least the people we want to work with. It's who they're working with. We want them to work with them, with us rather. And they work with us. Why? Because we're retirement income professionals who have access to tools like the Retirement Asset Optimizer and, which I'll show you in a minute, and the education you need to really deliver the knowledge they seek for understanding how Social Security, in my estimation, is the single most valuable retirement income asset they own. So as Glenn said in the beginning, I'm the co-founder and vice president of the Corporation for Social Security Claiming Strategies. What we do is we educate financial advisors on the intricacies of Social Security. We've written a 14-chapter, 200-page textbook on Social Security alone, something designed that you can utilize as not only a way to get educated so the very first time you face off with clients, you can do so with confidence and do so successfully, but it's also a tremendous resource and tool because of the way it's organized. All of the folks that go through our educational process not only get the book, go through the book, and have the opportunity to earn a designation, professional designation, but they also get the ongoing support of our team for any case questions they may have. I promise you that if you start talking about Social Security every day, you'll be fascinated, not only at the number of questions you get, but the types of questions you can get Social Security will always be standing behind you to help you answer those questions. Social Security, to give you some perspective, highly complex 2,728 filing rules, well over 500 possible filing combinations. And the POMS, the Program Operations Manual, is over 65,000 pages. This is about as complex can get. Our aim through the Corporation for Social Security Claiming Strategies is to provide you with the knowledge you need to face off with confidence about the everyday issues that people face, not with Medicare, not with Medicaid, not with disability, but with the Social Security retirement system alone. We aim to make you the retirement income specialist you need to be to differentiate yourself from the competition. So we provide the education, the ongoing support, and then ultimately the tools. So I'll stop right there, see if there's any questions, and then we can take a look at a quick demo of the software, and I'll talk a little bit about where we are with the relaunch of the software.
Thanks, Andy. I'm going to make this really quick because I know we're short on time and everyone wants to see the RAO. But when we were talking about the income buckets and the discretionary income, the question was, is the income from the annuity inflation adjusted as you were discussing it?
Yes.
Well, that was easy. And then way back at the beginning, you were talking about the earnings test.
Mm-hmm.
So does that ever end? Is that an ongoing? How does that work?
Yeah. So the earnings test is there for those who are taking benefits prior to full retirement age and they have earned income. Once you attain full retirement age, the earnings test goes away. You can make, $10 million a year and there's no impact to your Social Security income.
Excellent. And right now, that's all the questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, as it relates to the annuity, so there are annuities that if you went out and said, hey, Eric, show me the cheapest annuity to deliver that additional $18,000 of income, there are products that would require significantly less premium, but the way they're structured, they're never going to provide any kind of a pay raise. So you'd have to earmark dollars separately to account for inflation. The product we're demonstrating provides an automatic inflation adjustment on a performance basis, so we can reduce the amount of capital you have to commit to not only deliver the guaranteed minimum income, but also deliver that income gap on an inflation adjusted basis. So together, it's a really powerful tool. And I'll show you a little bit of that here in a minute. So, all right, I'm just going to need a minute to pull up the software, Maureen. So just bear with me, you guys, while I think I have to stop sharing for a minute. Am I still sharing? I don't even know. Stop share. Okay, there we go. Just give me 1 minute here. I'll get this pulled up. What I'll tell you is I pull up the software. So we are in the process of completing version 2.0 of the software. In the first iteration of the software, it was very much a user-driven tool. In order to figure out how much annuity premium was required, you had to leave the software with the values you needed. What is the income gap? When does the income begin? And then obviously you'd have to go to your partners at DMI and have them come back to you with a product solution, which my advice to you is to always double check with Eric and the team, because these products can be really complicated and things change every day, it seems, in the product space. But the way we set up the tool in this round is the software or the income products are built right in. So you never have to leave and you can arrive at, a simple conclusion before going to Eric and the team and getting additional information about the product and getting all the paperwork and the process down to deliver to a client. So I'm going to pull up essentially the case study that we just went through and let you see this. All right. So now let me share. So the version that I have here is a test version. We're in the final stages of development. The version that we'll have is called the Retirement Asset Optimizer, but it works just like this version you see here. But you can see here, this is John and Jane Sample, Massachusetts. They're both currently 65. Their primary insurance amounts are $3,200 and $2,800, right? So these are the very same PIAs I used here in the case study that I just went through in the PowerPoint. And then what we're going to look at here is we're going to look at a couple different scenarios. So we're going to say, all right, if I've got a couple with a $3,200 and $2,800 primary insurance amount, and their intent is to retire at a whatever age, so we can go as early as 50, but in the case study, I said 66 and 8 months. And I made them, by the way, I made them the exact same age for simplicity's sake, but you have the ability to pick when it is they want to retire. And there's a difference between when people retire and when they take benefits, right? So the first thing is, what's your desired retirement age? You'll remember in the presentation, I said we asked people, when do you plan to retire? And then when do you intend to take benefits? Sometimes it's before they retire, but at the end of the day, we want to understand this for planning purposes. So I'm going to say their intent is to take benefits early at 66 and 8 months. So the way we describe this, step one, this current plan is the stress test. So we're going to take your current plan. We're going to help you understand whether or not, in my example, $1.2 million is enough. And then we're going to look at an alternative approach. What if you took benefits at 70? You could look at any time, but I'm picking 70 because that's what I showed in that case study, using an asset allocation approach. And then we're going to look at what if we waited until 70 and we took an annuity. So the current and the alternative utilize an asset allocation approach to determine capital required. The optimum assumes we're using an annuity. Now, if there are any other forms of income that we want to account for, we can do so. They have a pension. How much is the pension? When does it begin? Is there a survivor benefit? Are there other forms of guaranteed income we want to consider? Some people will own rental property as an example that they always consider a retirement asset, or they have other passive income that they want to have accounted for in the retirement income plan. We can capture that here. What about uncountable income? So, there are people that will meet that own life insurance, and the sole purpose of the life insurance by the time they get to this age is to use it as a supplemental retirement tool. That's uncountable. What do we mean by that? It's uncountable and untaxable. So under provisional income, you can have things that are untaxable, but they're countable. Tax-free dividend income, as an example, is not taxable, but it's countable under provisional income for determining what your provisional income value is. Social Security benefits are uncountable, distributions from life insurance contracts are uncountable and untaxable, right? So we're going to capture them separately, taxable or tax-exempt interest from dividend income here. So we're going to do our best to capture everything we can. But this tool is designed to be a client engagement tool for you to show somebody in real time, after explaining to them the value of Social Security optimization, how Social Security optimization, or in this case, asset optimization, can really help them build a better, more fortified plan for less capital. The other things we need to know are, what do you have in retirement capital in total? We don't need to know account values, account names, account types. We just want an aggregate number for spouse one and spouse two. And then what's the makeup from a traditional versus Roth, because we do a tax calculation on here as well. So that's just a drop down you pick. Okay, so we'll say 100%. And we have the income goal, 108,000. If a survivor income goal, I pick 60,000. We could make this, we could make this 80,000 if we want. Doesn't really matter. It's just going to measure it for the purposes of the analysis, right? And then what we have here is if there's any excess capital. So meaning after we implement the plan, if we can say unequivocally there's a certain amount of capital we don't need for income, let's do a future value calculation on that based upon some assumed rate of return. So let's just say 5%. And I look at each scenario differently. We look at the current scenario, the alternative scenario, and the optimized scenario. Let's just say it's 5% across the board. Now, initial safe withdrawal rates. This is in a kind of an improvement over the old software. Assumed annual fees. In the old software, we assumed it was 1%, no matter who it was, who they were working with, Vanguard or a full service relationship. Now you get to pick. Why is this important? Because the fee plays a significant role in the net in your pocket initial safe withdrawal rate used for determining the capital requirements. So let's say we work with somebody who's a Vanguard person and 25 basis points is what they're paying. Fine, we can show that. We don't have to get hung up and split hairs about whether or not we're showing the appropriate fee, go down some kind of rabbit hole that totally distracts what we're doing. What's the portfolio construct based upon their risk tolerance? Let's say 60-40. How long do you want the income plan to last? We'll say 30 years. And then what do you want the probability of success to be? Now, it's interesting to me. I think the appropriate comparison between what we're doing with asset optimization and asset allocation is 99%. Because what you saw from me on the optimized plan is a retirement income plan made up of two parts, Social Security and an annuity. Both are guaranteed. So to me, 99%, which is the highest we can even mention from an asset allocation perspective, is the benchmark we should seek to compare asset optimization and asset allocation to, right? So the point is, I need to know how much capital I need if I'm going to use an asset optimization, asset allocation approach to attain a 99% probability of success, because that's the appropriate comparison to the optimization strategy, which has 100% probability of success, right? So that's all the inputs. And at the bottom here, this will all be essentially filled out for you. So on a $108,000 income goal, we have an $18,603 income gap that we have to fill when the Social Security benefits begin, in this case, age 70. I mentioned earlier in the old software, you'd have to go out and figure out which product you want to use, come back and key in the product, key in the premium. And it's kind of can be exhaustive. So we came down here and we just hit this button right here, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to actually pull up for us all the available products, and it's going to categorize them in two ways. Traditional, meaning you're never going to get a pay raise, versus performance-based, okay? So now I can go in here and I can pick a product. So I don't know the products like Erick would, so I'm just going to pick a product from the right side here. So let's say it's the BCA. Okay, now it's going to populate this product throughout the plan. It's going to give the carrier name, the product name, the ratings. Now the plan is complete. Now we have a complete plan, and now we can go through the analysis and figure out what's the outcome. So first off, on the left is a toolbar. We're going to go to current input. So we're going to look at the current plan. We want to look and see, is 1.2 million enough? How do we do that? It's very simple. We have a 30-year time horizon, a 99% probability of success for our objectives. The client seeks $108,000 of income. Their desired retirement age is 66 and 8 months. They want to take benefits at 66 and 8 months. Spouse one's annual benefit value, spouse two's annual benefit values equate to $72,000. They have no pension income, no other guaranteed income. The gap is $36,000. Just update. You're supposed to hit generate report anytime you make changes to the plan. I did not do that. Pardon me. Let's go back. The initial safe withdrawal rate now is net in your pocket 2.4%. They need 1.5 million. Right? So these numbers should look familiar to you. Now, what if we wait? Will that have any impact on the outcome and the capital requirement? Real simple, 108,000 less the higher Social Security benefits leaves us with 18,603. The initial safe withdrawal rate now is no longer 2.4, it's 2.65 like we talked about. 702 is what we need to close that income gap. Plus we need the bridge capital, right? Now, bridge capital is always a question. How do we arrive at that? I can show you how we do that here in a minute. But ultimately, what we calculate is how much of your own money you're going to need to use each year to supplement the other income you're collecting once your retirement income plan begins and before Social Security benefits begin. Because when Social Security benefits begin, all the guaranteed income can now be accounted for, and all that remains is a permanent income gap that we can backfill with an asset allocation approach or an annuity. So ultimately, that's the analysis of the current plan, and this is asset allocation versus an alternative, waiting in this case, using asset allocation. We can compare the two side by side right here. So you can show the client in real time, so what's the value of waiting? So in this case, here's the whole scenario for you, right? We go from needing $1.5 million to $1.075 million, right? And I just kind of went through all that, how all that happened. In addition, not only have we delivered a plan that requires less capital and taking them from underfunded to overfunded, but it's also much more tax efficient, like we talked about. And then it shows in the what I call the 4 areas of concern, how do the two plans perform? The 4 areas are the amount of income guaranteed, the amount adjusted for inflation, the amount considered taxable, and then the survivor benefit for each, right? What does that look like? So that's the current plan versus the alternative plan. It's clear that delaying is a better strategy. Now we want to know, if we couple delaying in this case with an annuity, what impact might that have on the outcome? So again, it's the same exact breakdown. We look at their objectives, 30 years at 99%. If they take benefits at 70, here's spouse one's benefit, spouse two's benefit. It's the very same gap, 18,603, but now we need 311 in the annuity, and we have 373 in the bridge capital. Now the total capital required is 684,268. That's a considerable difference from where we started. Which annuity are we working with? Here's the carrier name, the product name, the company ratings. By the way, we can show the premium being traditional or Roth, which will have an impact on the taxability of the overall plan. And now here's the optimized output. Here's the alternative plan versus the optimized plan. So we've already established that delaying is the right strategy. What's the primary difference beyond that? What's driving the optimized plan on the right to be so much more attractive than the original kind of alternative plan? It's the capital, right? So we need 311 to have an annuity fill the gap versus 702 to use an asset allocation approach. Again, couple that with the bridge capital. We go from needing $1,000,005 under the current plan to $1,075,000 under the alternative plan to $684,000 under the optimized plan. So we built a better, more competitive plan for significantly less capital, and we put the client in a much better position overall in accomplishing their objectives. So here we go. Close this out. Here are the different situations. What percentage is guaranteed? What percent is inflation adjusted? What percent is taxable? And then the survivor benefits. So here's their plan. Here's the alternative. Here's the optimized. And in the end of the day, it's all about capital, right? Why would I pick one plan over the other? Notwithstanding the fact that the plan is significantly better on a feature by feature basis, but the capital requirement right here. So they go from being underfunded by 300,000 to overfunded by 515,000. So not only is the survivor going to have considerably more guaranteed income because they're going to have the higher of the two Social Security benefits plus the 18,000 from the annuity, but they're also going to have any future value of the excess capital as well, right? So if we have $515,000 of excess capital under the optimized plan, we grow to just 5%. Look what that's worth in 10, 20, and 30 years. So this is the plan that allows your client to have their cake and eat it too, and they don't have to take on any risk or get lucky in any way. They simply have to work with somebody who's better at leveraging all the tools in the toolbox. So there's a lot to talk about here, Eric, as you know. This is something that if somebody was interested in, we would do a deep dive with them and a training, not only on Social Security, but on the software itself. The retirement asset optimizer version of this will be launched on January 1st. This is the test version. There's a lot here, so we're going through the testing phase. We're close, but I don't want to over promise and not deliver. So January 1st is the objective for delivering it. But if you're serious about being in the retirement income space and you want to set yourself apart from the competition, and you not only want to deliver really healthy retirement income plans, but you want to build a huge book with assets under management, nothing is going to put you in a better position to do this than the approach of retirement asset optimization. I've got advisors I've met over the years. A lot of what you see here is something that they've helped me develop. But I've got financial advisors who've got $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 books that 10 years ago weren't in the business, and all they do is retirement income planning, and to make this process the focal point of what they do. So this is why I partner with DMI. They partner with you. I'm a software provider and an educational provider who can give you the tools you need to totally set yourself apart from the competition. So I'll stop and see if there's any questions. But again, thanks everybody for investing the time and the opportunity to share the story.
That's awesome, Andy. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through that. And for those of us that have seen this before, give us a nice refresher. And for those of us on the call today that are seeing this for the first time, I tell you that Andy did a great job of really getting behind the curtains, right? There's oftentimes two questions. what time is it and how does the watch work? So what we learned today is how the watch works. What I would like to just take 30 seconds on is kind of tell you what time it is. So the way that we envision this working for agents and advisors is you, number one, get comfortable using the software and you're using the ultimate output. You're not going through each one of these descriptions with your clients, but rather utilizing this amazing technology and tool to create a highly customized and structured plan to be able to put in front of a client. And I can tell you, I've seen in the previous versions of this, I've seen the output and I've seen the light bulbs go on in the client's eyes when they actually recognize, just by making some key tactical moves and planning steps, how they can dramatically enhance their retirement and do so with much less money, right? So this is a process, folks, that is pretty easy to get involved in. We're going to be doing some additional training in March, a certification class, and you will have the opportunity to become experts in this concept and earn a certification to be able to put yourself out there as an expert in this space. For those of you that want to leverage this technology, we encourage you, if you're not already CSSCS certified, to attend that class, and there'll be more information coming out on that soon. I want to go ahead and just check with Maureen really quickly if there are any late questions that popped up.
No, we're good right now. Thank you, though.
Right. So for everybody that has joined us today, we appreciate your time. Step one is to reach out to us, either myself or if you work with any of our other very talented annuity VPs here, Phil Ferrara, Tyrell Jensen, or anyone on the team, reach out to us. We'd love to have a conversation with you and have an opportunity to either enhance our relationship that we currently have with you or earn an opportunity to create a relationship with you and ultimately help you do more business. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we hope the rest of your day is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Andy.